Candace Owens walked onto the View set with that familiar, quiet confidence. Her gaze sharp, posture poised, dressed in a crisp blazer that matched her unwavering calm. Sunny Hostin was already seated, her expression open but wary. The segment had been advertised as a deep dive into constitutional rights, but the tension was already thick through the studio lights. Whoopi introduced them, warm but guarded. She said, "Tonight on The View we're talking the Constitution, freedom of speech, rights, responsibilities. Candace Owens is here, and so is Sunny Hostin." Candace smiled once, measured. Sunny nodded, ready. Jimmy followed with the soft but assertive lead-in. He said, "Candace, let's start with something fundamental. You've been vocal about the First Amendment, about free speech. But some argue that certain public narratives threaten disinformation. Should that be restricted?" Everyone leaned in slightly. Candace answered without hesitation, voice steady. She said, "Free speech isn't a tool to punish or censor. It's a shield to protect us from tyranny. If you censor speech because you fear its power, you risk the moment democracy needs it most." The audience stirred a little, interest now building. Sunny spoke next, voice calm but firm. She said, "Candace, but what about speech that targets vulnerable groups? Hate speech, harassment, shouldn't we draw some lines?" Candace tilted her head. She said, "It's always easier to draw lines after a few bad words. But once drawing begins, it never stops. Who decides what's too hateful? What's too political? Where's the accountability?" Sunny replied thoughtfully, "I think laws should protect people from violence, not ideas. But there's a difference between speech that harms and dangerous rhetoric that incites." Candace nodded slowly. She said, "Incitement has a legal standard. It has definition. Speech doesn't instantly become harmful because some feel discomfort. The Constitution demands discomfort. That's its purpose." The audience absorbed that. Whoopi looked on carefully, sensing the stage was set. Then Sarah Haynes jumped in. She said, "You both agree the Constitution is the foundation. But in our digital age, social media platforms, flash mobs, shouldn't we adapt rules to protect people from targeted online harassment?" Candace's eyes fixed on Sarah. She said, "We don't adapt the Constitution. We defend it. If platforms police speech because public sentiment demands it, then platforms become unaccountable publishers. And once publishers censor, they choose winners and losers." The room was quiet. Sunny leaned forward. She said, "But when speech causes real harm, bullying, violence, hate, shouldn't platforms have responsibility to limit that? Not government. Platforms." Candace shifted. She said, "Platforms are privately owned but speak loudest in public squares. When they censor, they're shaping public debate without public accountability." The tension between them deepened as Joy Behar added fuel. She said, "If a platform stops neo-Nazi recruitment, is that censorship or society protecting itself?" Candace inclined her head once. She said, "Stopping illegal activity is law enforcement. But banning people from speaking about why they believe something? That isn't enforcement, that's suppression. Even hateful ideas deserve light, not darkness." The studio held its breath. Sunny's jaw tightened. She said, "So you'd let them speak, fully, even when we find it abhorrent?" Candace's reply was immediate. She said, "Yes, because freedom doesn't pick favorites. If it does, it loses its meaning." Whoopi glanced at the camera, voice almost conspiratorial. She said, "All right, let's bring this up close, because it's happened here. This show, our network, has faced criticism online. Some have accused The View and especially me of promoting certain narratives while silencing others. Candace, do you think media outlets have the right to choose which viewpoints they air?" The silence that followed was thick, reflective. Candace met Whoopi's gaze. She said slowly, "Media outlets are private companies. They have rights. But they also have responsibilities. They must make clear they're curating, not creating facts. When curation becomes propaganda, the line gets crossed." Sunny leaned forward, tone earnest. She said, "But if newsrooms present a platform for hate-filled or plainly false information, isn't that a problem too?" Candace nodded once. She said, "The problem is believing there's one universal truth. Facts matter. Evidence matters. But truth isn't decided by filter, it's discovered through debate. You don't filter truth, you test it. The tension shifted again. Everyone waited as the conversation sharpened, but the true collision was still ahead. The studio had settled into what felt like an electric lull. Candace glanced at Sunny, her expression steady, almost unreadable. Whoopi leaned forward, her tone courteous but probing. She said, "We can't ignore the elephant in the room. Deplatforming and cancel culture. If someone on your side said something offensive and got banned, would you stand by it? Or would you call for consequences?" Candace met Sunny's eyes directly. She said, "I would demand fairness. We can't have rules that apply only to speech we dislike. If the left deplatforms someone, that doesn't protect democracy. It silences it." Sunny bristled. She said, "But when speech has consequences, when it leads to threats, to violence, doesn't responsibility lie with the speaker? Not censorship, accountability." Candace paused, collected. She said, "Agreed. Liability makes sense. Actions have consequences. But the moment we censor based on offense, we start deciding which ideas get heard. That's power. And power corrupts." The audience shifted again. Eyes on Candace. Even those not cheering were listening hard. Joy intervened, raising her voice. She said, "What about conspiracy theories that led to January 6th? Should those be allowed free speech?" Candace's gaze didn't flinch. She said, "That's where the law steps in. If conspiracy theories lead to insurrection, that's action, not speech. Speech is protected until it incites lawlessness. Then law stops it at the act." Sunny's tone sharpened. She said, "Words still matter. It's a slippery slope when speech is used as a weapon." Candace acknowledged the concern. She said, "Words do matter. But freedom is messy. It's not neat or comfortable. If you want safe conversation, build a cult. For democracy, build a forum." Whoopi nodded, but her voice held the strain of caution. She said, "But don't you worry that some voices troll only to provoke? To spread lies and sow chaos?" Candace leaned forward, her tone unwavering. She said, "Then debunk them. Don't silence them. Let truth win in the open. If we start muting the uncomfortable, hate speech, misinformation, or unpopular truths, then we end up protecting narratives, not the Constitution." Sunny's expression tightened. She said, "That's idealistic. But in the real world, kids on social media, algorithmic radicalization, don't you think some moderation is necessary?" Candace's voice softened only a fraction. She said, "If moderation means censorship by corporations or platforms, then we must be wary. If moderation comes from parents, teachers, laws, accountability structures, we can trust it. But never censorship disguised as safety." A hush fell. Some nodded, some looked uncomfortable. Whoopi scanned the room. She said, "This is more than a debate. It's a philosophical divide. How do you live with freedom that hurts?" Candace met her gaze. She said, "By understanding freedom isn't comfort. It's responsibility. It's the acceptance that someone you dislike will speak. Your defense isn't silence, it's resilience." Sunny's voice softened, but her eyes remained hard. She said, "You're defending the idea of the Constitution. But in exile, some voices carry violence. Doesn't that break your argument?" Candace paused, collected every thought. She said, "Violence stops conversation. Speech starts it. If speech leads to violence, that's when law steps in. Not before." Another pause followed. The tension hovered, thick and unresolved. But the conversation had shifted. Candace's words had drawn lines, not squares. She looked at Sunny one final time before the next turn. "I respect your heart," she said. "But tonight, I defend our rights." Candace sat upright, her voice steady and firm as she prepared for the moment she knew was coming. The studio lights shone harshly on her face, but her eyes stayed sharp, unflinching. A ripple of tension ran through the room as Whoopi finally spoke again, voice measured yet tense. "We've heard strong defense of free speech. But Candace, what about after speech leaves our mouths? When people act on what they've heard, when hashtags turn into threats, when rallies become riots, what responsibility do speakers have for outcomes they didn't intend?" Candace paused. Her gaze shifted neither down nor away. she said. Responsibility lies with intention. If someone says, equal rights for everyone, and another person hears that as an excuse for violence, that's not speech. That's a misunderstanding. You don't ban equal rights. You correct the misinterpretation. Sunny leaned forward, eyes earnest. She said, but words can come cloaked. Equal rights can become a dog whistle. Freedom can become cover for hate. When context changes everything, how do we enforce your ideal without harm? Candace met her challenge head-on. Then we educate context. We teach history. We build media literacy. We don't outlaw words. We build understanding. The moment we start banning phrases because some will twist them, we empower the twisters. Joy Behar interrupted sharply. She said, but there's a difference. Some speech is unambiguously hateful. We don't need a twist to know it's wrong. Why not just draw the line there? Candace responded almost gently. Once you draw a line for unambiguously hateful, the question becomes who draws it. Definitions shift. Today it's hate. Tomorrow it's dissent. That's how freedoms die, one consensus at a time. The tension tightened. Sunny's voice dropped. Are you saying some should be allowed to hate? Candace's words were sharp. She said, no. I'm saying hate needs to be fought, not banned. We battle it with compassion, with laws against action, not with censorship. Whoopi cleared her throat. The air hummed in that pause. She said, okay, Candace, before we move on, we need to underscore something. We had planned for a respectful debate. But if you're implying the View should host hate, that crosses a line. Candace leaned in slightly, tone still calm. I'm not implying that. What I'm saying is that if speech makes you uncomfortable, remove your headphones. Don't silence it. That discomfort is the price of freedom. Sunny's face softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. Discomfort can protect the vulnerable. Candace answered succinctly, or it can deny freedom to all. When we censor discomfort, we protect limits, not people. A hush fell, heavier than before. The studio's energy had shifted. Candace hadn't won a round. She'd shifted the battleground. She looked directly into the camera. The Constitution isn't meant for comfort. It's meant to preserve rights, even when they're uneasy. She turned to Sunny. All due respect. Then she leaned back. No applause, no scorn, just weight, charged and unresolved. The room held its breath. Candace leaned forward, her voice steady and unwavering. Let's be clear, we all want safety, respect, and progress. But you can't build a lasting society by silencing speech you don't like. You've got to strengthen it with better ideas. Sunny met her gaze squarely. And if those ideas don't win? If hateful speech grows? Candace's response was immediate. Then we fight it with facts, empathy, and law when behavior crosses the line. But never with silence. Because silence always tells the strong what they can do. The studio was quiet as Whoopi's voice cut through. Thank you, Candace, Sunny, Sarah, Joy. That was a powerful discussion. Maybe the fiercest yet. Candace nodded, gathering herself. She said, fierce, yes, but necessary. Freedom was never meant to be comfortable. Sunny took a breath. She replied softly, I still believe some ideas need consequences. Candace held her gaze. So do I. Consequences for actions, yes. Consequences for ideas, no. The audience, tense and reflective, waited as the credits began to roll. No applause rang out, just the weight of words that don't land easily. Candace stood, glanced at Sunny once more, then walked off set. The hosts remained silent as the lights dimmed and the view ended. What just happened wasn't just a debate, it was a reminder. The Constitution isn't just a document. It's a dialogue powerful enough to unsettle anyone. And sometimes, that's the point.